Alright, now for those who don't know, the idea of the nine circles of hell is an idea taken from Dante's Inferno, right? It's the idea that when you die, you go to hell, and the circle of hell that you go to is proportional to the sin that you indulged in most when you were alive on Earth. Now, it doesn't fully correlate with the seven deadly sins. It's kind of confusing in that aspect because most of the circles of hell are actually correlated with given sin, but there's more to it than that, essentially. Now, this useful painting by Botticelli, by Sandro Botticelli, known as the Map of Hell, uh, helps us in this little diagram, right? In order, you got the top layer, which is, well, technically it's like limbo, not exactly hell at all, right? Then second, you got lust, which is deadly sin, gluttony, which is deadly sin, greed, which is deadly sin, anger, that's just another word for wrath, which is deadly sin, heresy, violence, fraud, and then treachery, right? And the deeper you go down, the deeper you find yourself. Now, the thing with Lindsey Graham, when it comes to like theorizing which circle of hell he's currently burning in, is that by virtue of being a Republican, it could be any. You know what I mean? Because like obviously lust makes sense. Lust doesn't just mean like in a sexual aspect, but like specifically like relating to money, right? It can be a definition of lust. And he's a Republican, therefore he's a corrupt politician. Uh, their whole deal is to be somehow worse than the Democrats, right? So it'd be temptful to say, well, he lies in the second topmost layer of lust, right? But beyond that, the way that he specifically had a relationship with power and money, that's got very heavy gluttony vibes, right? Gluttony is the idea of not being able to resist temptation, whereas lust is like the existence of it, hence why the relationship to money is kind of different. So that could be, there's a case made he could be in the gluttony layer too, right? Greed is kind of related to these two. The fact that greed has its own layer does imply that the lust and gluttony layer have their more like conventional connotation of money and food, like specifically. But if you take the more like biblical reading of it, lust and gluttony do have separate definitions, right? Anger is something that I can't really argue he would fit into because he was like a pretty calm person, at least by Republican standards. You know what I mean? He was more like the conniving, like calculating evil, more like a Steve Bannon type than out loud screaming about how like I don't know trans people are turning to frogs homosexual or some shit. You know what I mean? He was less so that type, so I don't really buy him currently being in the anger layer, right? Heresy. I guess heresy depends on like your views on evangelical Christianity, right? It's a it's an evil religion, and he was an evil man who believed in the evil religion for evil reasons. So there's a case to be made for heresy here. But like, as much as I believe that evangelical Christianity is not a real religion and that you people are fucking insane, that does feel a little disrespectful. You know what I mean? So I'm not gonna fully commit to that idea. Now, violence. Here's a little thing with like the idea of violence, specifically relating to like the circles of hell, right? It specifically makes a category for violence and not toleration of violence, right? So the thing with Lindsey Graham is like he would be the type of person to celebrate a fascist getting into power and forcing all the gay people into concentration camps. You know what I mean? Like he was that type of nigga. He would be like bouncing with joy, but he wouldn't be the one shooting. He never actually. I don't think there's any records of him like partaking in physical violence himself directly, which means technically he doesn't qualify for the violence layer, right? Fraud. He's a Republican, so the fraud layer, obviously, he'd at least be in the running for it, right? But I think the layer that he's most likely to fit into is the very bottom one of treachery. Because, and this isn't just him being a Republican, this is him being an American in general, right? He was very driven specifically by his will to do anything and give up anything for power, right? Graham is, I guess, a little bit like McConnell, who is coming next, um, in the sense that he was prone to give up on everything if it meant power for himself, to the point that he made a very blatant pro-Trump shift at a very particular and sudden point. You know what I mean? In spite of the fact that he probably died hating the guy. You know what I mean? which means he has no allegiances. Arguably, he's a person who doesn't even have beliefs, not unlike Donald Trump, ironically, but you get what I mean, right? Which is the very definition of treachery. Once again, treachery in this definition doesn't so much define turning on your own camp as it means not having true allegiances that aren't flippant. You know what I mean? The word is treachery, but what it really means is flippantry, right? And flippantry does define a lot of the big names of the Republican Party in the current day. The Republican Party, I hear myself, Republican aligned people. You know what I mean? So I do feel like that's pretty interesting to think about. But the argument to me that he's in the deepest layer of treachery, in my mind, makes more sense and holds more water than the other arguments that could be made for the other circles. But once again, I'm not an expert on Dante's Inferno, right? Very much not so. So this is to an extent knowledge that is outside my general wheelhouse, right? I might be a mythology nerd, but most of my knowledge regarding like stuff like that is more so relating to actual like stuff that's canon to Christianity. You know what I mean? So, you know, there is that hole in my knowledge that you people in the comments might be inclined to fill for me. You know what I mean? So yeah, pretty quick video concept. I just wanted to commentate on that because it's a conversation that came up when I was talking with some Americans on the internet. You know what I mean? Just conversing. Which circle of hell do you think he's burning in? And, you know, yeah, I got curious about things like that, so might as well explore the topic. Um, Technically, this does count as philosophy, so there's that. Hopefully, the next video will be more normal. I need to stop saying that after every single video because every single video concept is more insane than the last one. Whatever.